Hello. Hey, I'm Ken Vermeille, and this is another episode of Absolutely, where we dive deep into what it takes to scale and grow a tech startup. Today, we're going to talk about some of the common mistakes and pitfalls that founders make when building their first minimum viable product. Now, everybody loves the term minimum viable product or MVP, and everyone has different ideas on how to build it. However, you have to be careful when building your MVP because you want it to be good. You want your product to launch and scale effectively, and you want to craft excellence. And at Vermilion Sky, that's what we're all about, crafting excellence. So follow me as we go into the top 3 reasons why you need to build MVPs better. Now, the interesting thing is when you first start building a product, you have an idea of what you want to build before you even talk to your market. And this idea or the ideal of the product that you want to build can sometimes prevent you from getting to the success that you want. Now, you may have specific insight into the market. You may have even a customer base or an audience that you'd want to put your product on. However, you still need to take the time and test it. And testing your product means that your initial idea may not be the idea that you actually launch to the market. An entrepreneur's ability to disassociate themselves from that idea is key. And a common pitfall is sticking to that idea, even though you know that it's not going to give you the results that you need or the market doesn't want it. Now, this is a toxic thing. A lot of people deal with it in many ways. It's something that can be unhappy when you find out that the idea that you've been working on, or the initial idea, or the initial understanding of your idea is not exactly what the market wants. It can be discouraging. And in that discouragement, people still try to force it to work. It won't work. What makes better sense is if you take the time to say, hey, we have a hypothesis, and in this hypothesis we thought that we would get this result. Now, we didn't get the result, and now the next step or the next best thing to do is to revise the hypothesis. Now, your minimum viable product or MVP is not necessarily there for you to make money. The most valuable thing that you get from your MVP is the knowledge of the market. In the exercise of creating an MVP, gathering testers, having people test your product, and getting a good understanding of the actual problems that they face and how your product solves their problem or how your product relates to their problem, that is the thing that is extremely effective. That's something that you can't buy. That's something that's not hanging out in a database. And that exercise and process is the focus of your MVP. Nothing else matters. You should have a business plan and you should have a general idea of how your application is going to make money, but the goal isn't that. The goal isn't to make money. The goal is specifically to gather data. And once you have that data, you have to make the decision as to whether you're going to change your idea to fit the market, or you don't change your idea and your product dies. So that's the number one thing, is just being able to embrace change, being able to validate the idea, and not spending too much time in building or pursuing a product that doesn't have any market appeal. That being said, before you even get to the point in where you're building an MVP, you want to make sure that you have problem solution fit, meaning that the people that you're building this thing for, they have a problem that has a high pain point. They understand that this thing is going to help them solve that high pain point, and they value it. Now, something can have a high pain point. You as a founder, you know that this thing has a high pain point, and people may not want to solve it for a variety of reasons. So that's it can be counterintuitive to say, hey, I have this product, it solves your problem, I know it's a high pain point, and then it doesn't resonate with the correct people. Now, before you jump ship and try something else, it could be that your audience is wrong. Now, knowing that your audience is wrong can be a weight off of your shoulders, mainly because now you know that, okay, it's not necessarily the problem is it's not at a high pain point. It's more so the fact that you're targeting the wrong audience. And then you'd have to go through the same process of testing with that audience, making sure that that audience has a good understanding of what your product does, and then you're able to launch that product. So in that, still be able to change and adapt to what people want. And the other thing is, if you decide to switch markets, make sure that the market has the time and budget to actually interact with your product, and make sure that you can make some money in the future. Don't focus on too much money right now. Just take the time and validate your product and make sure that it can work, and emotionally detach yourself from the outcome of that product. The final point on this is that you want to go through enough iterations and where your product is so good that people are begging to give you money. That may not be the first iteration. That might not be the 10th iteration. You need to be at a point where you consistently iterate, take in feedback from the market, and make your product really good. Yes, marketing helps. Yes, distribution helps. But spending the time on your product and ensuring that that product is well adjusted towards your market or towards the people that you're trying to solve this problem for, that helps you get to the point where you are making the big bucks down the line. The next issue with MVPs is that sometimes entrepreneurs over-engineer that MVP. Now, an MVP, also known as a minimum viable product, means that you want the minimum impact for your efforts. Usually this means do one thing and do that one thing very, very well. Once you do that one thing very, very well, then maybe add something else. But a lot of the times it's you want to validate that this one thing does work. And it takes time to get that one thing right. And it's better that you get this one thing right than get 10 things kind of sort of okay. Like if you really get one thing good and great about your product, then your app becomes known, or your product or service becomes known as the solution to this problem. And this problem doesn't appear anymore. Or another problem appears and then you have to solve that later. But if you spend the time doing that one thing very well, then you're golden. So do not spend so much time building in features that people may or may not use. Engineering is expensive. Hiring an engineer for a year is going to cost you upwards up until $100,000. And because of that, you want to optimize their time, and you don't want them building things that aren't tested in the market, that have nothing to do with your core value proposition, and potentially will not make you money. That's waste, and nobody likes waste, and nobody likes to work on things, especially developers. Developers don't like to work on things that they know are absolutely not going to work. So don't over-engineer your MVP. Your MVP doesn't have to be the first. It's not necessarily the first version of your application. You don't need to do like a big marketing push for your MVP. Again, the goal is to gather data and feedback and then eventually make a version 1. Or you take that data and feedback, you bring it to an investor, and that investor invests in the potential of what you've built. Or you take that data and then you build a better version of your MVP that is customer ready. Over engineering your MVP only means that you are sort of trying to gather data, and you're also trying to make money, and you're also trying to grow your product, and you're trying to grow your brand, and you spend a lot of money and time doing a lot of different things other than focusing on your product. Your MVP should not have a fancy logo. It shouldn't have, it should have a name. It should be a working title name. It should be something in where nothing else really matters other than the solution that your product is solving. So take the time to do that. Don't go in and just build this massive thing, not knowing if you're not going to make money and not validate it. Just take the time to really focus on one thing. And I keep repeating myself and saying, focus on one thing, because there are a lot of products that get called an MVP and they are not an MVP at all. This is an attempt at a version 1, and the attempt at a version 1 becomes very risky because now you don't have a validated market. You don't know if it's going to make money. You spent $500,000 on this thing, and it is risky. An MVP, or a minimum viable product, it lowers risk. It makes it so that you're consistently getting in feedback. You know what to do. You know what to change. Your customers are part of the process. You are integrating their feedback into your product and then making this one thing excellent. So don't over engineer. Don't add dark mode. Don't add chat. Don't, even if it's easy, right? That's the other thing. There are a lot of features that you could just pick up from the vine and implement into your product. You don't necessarily have to do it. Just focus on one thing, get the feedback, get the learnings, understand what your product is supposed to do, understand your market and the other things that your product may solve for them in the future, but don't implement it again until they are begging you for money. It's a patience game. If you wait and you take your time to just sit back and relax and not be too worried about whether or not this product is going to make money, if you take the time to build it and build it well, it will. So again, just to recap, do not over engineer. Focus on one product. Focus on one core feature. Now I'm not saying don't build like login or authentication or things that make sense, right? If we take this analogy all the way out to, let's say, a car, right? The purpose of a car is to get from A to B, and an MVP of a car wouldn't necessarily be a wheel, right? A wheel can't get you from A to B, but a skateboard can. A skateboard can get you from A to B. In building the skateboard, you're going to get feedback from the skateboard, and ultimately the point of this analogy is that if you work on solving the problem, which is ultimately transportation, you can then transfer the knowledge and feedback from your customers into a car over the course of time. So one thing, the problem drives the product, and your job as an entrepreneur is to understand your customers, understand your audience, and build the product towards what they really need. And finally, the third topic, which prevents people from building really good MVPs, is the concept of stealth mode. Stealth mode doesn't exist. It is a way to be lazy. You have to build an audience around your product. Today I was on LinkedIn and I saw somebody's, I'm on LinkedIn. I post some things. Follow me on LinkedIn, Ken Vermeille. I post some things and I interact with the audience. And I try to keep my ear to the ground. I saw a founder who is the CEO at Stealth Product. That's a waste of time. Great. I know that you're building something in secret. I know that it's going to be something in tech because your past work experience was probably in tech. But the issue is you're not building an audience. You need to build authority in the audience's mind. You're building a product. You're building something that will help them. You need to interact with them. You need to find out where they live, where they interact, and you have to be there telling them, hey, you have a problem. I have a solution to the problem. Even if you don't have a product yet, right? Even if you are in the process of just designing this thing or sketching the flows out, if you build an audience early on, like super early on, it's going to provide you meaningful feedback at the very early stages. It can prevent you from building a product that people don't care about, right? If you become obsessed with solving this problem and people are like, I don't really care about this problem, or this is what we do and this is good enough, it could save you a lot of time and money. But the other thing is, by building this audience of people who you're trying to help, you're trying to solve a problem for, they will help you in the future by downloading your app or giving you feedback or interacting with you and letting other people know that this person is working on something and you should check them out. As soon as you can, describe your app to those people and talk to as many people as you can. You never know who's listening and you never know who is watching. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Oh, what if somebody steals my app? Or my idea? Or what if somebody sees it on LinkedIn and then they go out and build it? They're not going to do it. I've been in the tech industry for about 15 years. I've developed apps from scratch. I can do everything back and forth, right? You throw an idea towards me, I can build it. You say, hey, Ken, go build Snapchat, I can build it. But would I want to build Snapchat? No. Now, the reason why I bring up Snapchat is because if you told me about Snapchat right before Snapchat came out, I would say no. I wouldn't actually care. I wouldn't think that it would be $1 billion business. I would have it would just go completely underneath my radar. The technology to build Snapchat at the time it's not a crazy project, right? It could be it's a college senior project who's in a computer science at a regular school. It's not difficult to build at all. But most people didn't build it. It's not necessarily just the product itself. It's everything that they did around the product to understand who they were targeting, understand why they were targeting them. Snapchat had a great thumb on this new way of communicating that other social media did not. They understood that the target audience for Snapchat essentially said Facebook is for my mom, not for me, right? I have sons of various ages, and my oldest son essentially said the same thing to me. And even though I knew that, I still never made the connection to build Snapchat or build something like that. I say all of this to say it doesn't matter if you share your idea with people. Nobody's going to build it. It's very rare. Now, you could share the idea, but I would not share certain things like, hey, here's the total accessible market of this opportunity. Here are some of the associations and people, like all of the things that would help you in the distribution and the marketing part. You don't need to talk about that. What you can talk about is the problem that your product solves. You can even talk about how the product will solve the problem, even if you have nothing built, and show people the process of you building the product and seek feedback. If you do that, when it comes to either you launching an initial version of your application as an MVP, so launching your MVP to a small select few group of people, getting their feedback and iterating, you will have people there. What's even better is that once you're past the MVP phase, you've polished your application, it's ready for version 1, and you're ready to collect money and grow your business or get revenue or get funding. Once you're ready to do all of that stuff, if you have built an audience over time, then you are much more likely to succeed than if you stay in quote unquote stealth. So don't go into stealth. Talk to your potential customers. Spend a lot of time with them, learning about what makes them tick. Learn about the things that keep them up at night, and also become an authority around this problem. Go out, I would say wherever they are, find 1,000 people on whatever platform that they are, and and get 1,000 followers who may or may not have like that problem, and grow with them. Share yourself with them, and if you do that, even if your product is bad, they'll give you enough feedback for you to take your product from bad to great. So again, no stealth, just focus on building something great. Okay, so to conclude, don't get too caught up on your initial idea. It's going to change, and that's not a bad thing. Because it will change, you will have a better experience in building your product. Your product will be better, and people will love you for it. Second thing is, do not over engineer your initial MVP, because doing that will put you in a position in where you're building a lot of things that have nothing to do with your customers. Build one thing, get that one thing right, and once you get it right, then maybe build something else. And the final point is, don't launch in stealth mode. Yell to the mountaintops about what you want your app to be. Talk about the problem that you're solving. Don't hide it. Nobody's going to steal your idea. It's very rare. A lot of time and resources go into building a mobile app or a SaaS business. And so by hiding your idea or going into stealth, you're only hurting yourself, and you're preventing all of the pre-launch buzz that could skyrocket you into the stratosphere. I'm saying skyrocket because funny thing is, I don't like that word, but I'm integrating this word into my vocabulary so that it could be more palatable to me. Anyway, I digress. So do all these things. You will be great. You will be amazing. Your product will be even more amazing, and you will be in the position of where you can craft an excellent product that is precise, that people love to use. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's our episode. I'm glad that you were able to spend this time with me. Please let me know if you have any feedback. Again, I want to make sure that you are building the best applications known to man, and I want to be there along your journey. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you soon.